This is an Eye on Annapolis special update.
We've all heard about how hard the bars and restaurants and retail businesses have been hit with the COVID-19 pandemic. And make no mistake, they have and will continue to be hit hard. But today I wanted to talk about another industry that has been decimated and one that we're all missing: events and festivals. If you look at the calendar in any year but this year, weekends are filled with festivals, music festivals, wine festivals, beer festivals, parades, shows, boat shows, Renaissance festivals, and more. All of them came to a screeching halt in March with limited communication from various governments. But a festival or any large outdoor event starts out like a train. It slowly starts to move and picks up steam, and when it finally gets up to full speed, the gates open and the festival begins. But there is so much to be done while getting up to speed that the state, county, and city may not have considered. And keep in mind that these events are indeed robust businesses that add incredibly to our local economy. And unlike a bar or a restaurant or a retail store that can open up after a shutdown, there is only a very brief window of opportunity for these businesses to operate. Sometimes it's dictated by the weather, sometimes by tradition, and sometimes by permit. For the festivals in the area, there is no, hey, we can open up in a few weeks instead. For all intents and purposes, if a festival does not happen, the organizer is out of business for a year, at least. Two of the most iconic local large events in the area are coming up soon: the Maryland Renaissance Festival, which is slated to open up on August 29th, and the Annapolis Boat Shows that start on October 1st. Both have their challenges, both are hoping and planning to open, and today we have the general managers of both to talk about it. Welcome Paul Jacobs from the Annapolis Boat Shows and Jules Smith from the Maryland Renaissance Festival. Oh, and a quick note. There is an irritating, well, at least to me, hum in this recording, and I do apologize. I had not planned for Reliable Contracting to be repaving my street today, nor did I figure that they would line up a dozen dump trucks right outside my window, idling the whole time. And before we get going, just one more thing, because things move at lightning speed in the world of COVID. Yesterday, when we talked with Jules Smith, who is the general manager of the Maryland Renaissance Festival, he was unsure as to what was going to happen for 2020. As of yesterday, he was planning to go forward tentatively. However, we have just learned today that the 2020 Renaissance Festival has indeed been canceled for this year. But I do feel Jules has some very valid points and some very salient topics that needed to be discussed when it comes to planning events during the times of COVID. Bring on 2021. Now, on with the show. Joining us on the phone today is Paul Jacobs, who is the owner and general manager of the Annapolis Boat Shows. We've had him here on the podcast a couple different times. And for those that don't know, the boat shows are 3 long weekends every year here in Annapolis, 1 in April, 2 in October. And the October ones, anyhow, have been around for 50 plus years and running. And, my calculator doesn't really go that high, but it's buckets and buckets of money that these events have thrown into the local economy over the last half century. And Paul, welcome back. And I wish it was under different circumstances, but we're in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic, and we wanted to talk about the boat shows for 2020. How are you?
I'm fine, John. Thanks for having me on. There's a lot to talk about, and a lot of things that we know, and a lot of things that we don't know. But I will say that our approach to this year is that it's a difficult year for everyone, but you have to continue the economy. We think we can produce boat shows that are safe. We think that they will be a lot different than they've been in the past, and I can articulate exactly how those are going to be different, but they will be done in a way that people can be safe and yet productive for those folks that depend on these things every year. We understand the importance of them in the industry, and we understand the importance to the commerce of Annapolis. So we're charging ahead full speed.
Well, as I said, too, that one thing that a lot of people don't realize, or maybe it's just not front of mind, is that your entire year is built around 3 long weekends. And if you look at any festival, it doesn't matter whether it's a beer festival or whatever, the people that are organizing it, that is their entire year. It could be 12 hours in one day is when it is. And obviously there's a lot more that goes into it. But a restaurant or a bar or any kind of a business that was affected by a shutdown is able to come back into business and to start to rebuild pretty quickly in the grand scheme of things. But that's not something that you're going to be able to do. When this pandemic first hit back in March, you were just getting ready to pretty much open the gates for your spring shows, one on the Bay Bridge Boat Show, which is over on the Eastern Shore, and the Annapolis Sailboat Show. And
that's right.
I mean, how did you deal with that?
Well, we of course, being the optimists that we are, put the decision off for quite a while until about the 1st of April, until finally we realized that it was just not a safe, not an intelligent thing to do, that the spread of the virus was too critical, that we shouldn't be a part of that. So we chose to shut our show down for the spring, and at that point in time, then of course you've got to unravel all the things you've done over the last 4 or 5 months. And we have to uncontract all the contracts for the exhibitors, and we have to deal with all the people that have purchased tickets and all the classes that have been signed up for, workshops, that sort of thing. And so we tried to be as fair as we could possibly be with everybody, and we allowed people to move the money forward into future shows, and we refunded the ones that were that wanted refunds. Anybody that had a ticket, for instance, in the springtime, they were able to keep those tickets, and they can use those in the fall. So they got a nice deal on a fall ticket. But so there, every case, every part of the boat show was different. But the bottom line is that we were collecting money from exhibitors and from ticket sales over the months preceding, and then we had to return it all.
Right. Well, I do want to compliment you on the way that you handled this. And I mean, there were some people that just went into radio silence back in March, like, okay, we don't know what we're going to do, so we're just going to shut up and continue to sell tickets or whatever it may be. Others were like, the sky is falling and everything else. And you guys came out and really said, okay, the sky might be falling, but we're not sure. And your message was basically, we are planning to go ahead, but we are prepared to shut down if we need to. And ultimately, unfortunately, that's, what it ended up being. But I thought that the way that you handled that was just spectacular. And I mean, I don't think anybody could have faulted you. I mean, it's like, what else are you going to do?
Right. Well, it's a responsibility we have. We have a responsibility to the industry. We have a responsibility to those people who plan to come to Annapolis and attend these shows, or who bought tickets, or it's something that we don't take lightly. And so we did kind of put things on hold and gave them a deadline of, I guess it turned out to be April Fool's Day, right? And at that point in time, then it became very clear that it needed to be canceled. So, which we did. Right.
Well, I mean, here we are now in July. And this is our, this is our March for the boat shows, and still trying to figure things out. I know that you are planning to open, and I know that you've taken, some drastic changes to the boat show of what anybody may remember it as. And you're prepared to do it, and to do it safely. And as I look through the Maryland regulations, I agree with you. There's nothing that says that you can't do it. Governor Hogan did lift it. I mean, I'm looking from a frequently asked questions under the recovery thing. It says there is no longer a limit on social gatherings subject to directives issued by the Secretary of Health. Blah 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 blah. And they talk about leisure and recreational and leisure and cultural gatherings, and said they're permitted as long as they don't take place in a theater, concert hall, amphitheater, or similar venues where a live performance would take place. So, and then it also says it doesn't affect parades or festivals or other outdoor events, which are now permitted. And I'm very confused, which I'm sure you're probably equally as confused.
Yes, and if you're confused, you can imagine what we're going through at the same time. The guidelines are not clear. We have been communicating at all levels, trying to get a clear picture of what we can and can't do, or what we should do to make sure that it's safe. And nobody really has a great answer at this point. But I mean, none of us have been through this before, so this is all kind of going through it blind. But even if you were to doing the math, even if you were to take a 6-foot separation between people and put them in our show, and by the way, our shows are all open outdoor shows,
right?
So there's a completely different set of rules for an outdoor event versus an indoor event. And if you take all the space that we use in downtown Annapolis and divide it into 6-foot by 6-foot squares, or 6-foot circles, or any way you want to do it, and have one person each one, we can accommodate 19,000 people per day.
Wow,
and
okay.
that's far, far more than we would ever have in this boat show. And this year what we've done is we've decided to limit the tickets that we would sell on any given day to a much smaller number than normal, and therefore spreading the population over those 4 days in the Powerboat Show, 5 days in the Sailboat Show. So instead of having a 2,000 or 3,000 person Thursday and a 13,000 or 14,000 person Saturday, we're going to have 5,000 or 6,000 person days for 4 or 5 days. So we spread it out over time. We keep people separated. We have all one-way aisles down through tents and around tents. We will do all of our. The one thing the health department, the county health department, really liked was that we would be checking people at the stadium. The parking is at the stadium on a normal basis. We check them. We scan their ticket. We test them for temperature. We stamp them. They put on their mask or their face covering, and then they're allowed to get on the bus. At that point, then, when they get downtown, we have specific lines for entering the show in various locations. The bus pulls up to that. They walk right in. There's no touch. There's no wristbanding. There's nothing. It's just a touchless entry, and so therefore we keep the lines down in downtown. So those are just some of the kinds of things we're doing. We've eliminated the evening events so that we can disinfect and decontaminate. We are making sure that everybody is required, by the way, to wear a face covering during the show, not just in and out, but during the show. If people don't want to do that or they can't do that, we understand. They just can't come this year. They need to come back next year. So everybody will be required to be wearing face masks. We have hand washing stations. We have touchless hand sanitizing stations. We're doing everything that everybody is asking for to make sure that this can be a safe and very productive event.
And I'm sure that the vendors that are there, the boat exhibitors and everything else, they're going to be doing their own things as well, obviously, and they're looking to sell sailboats and powerboats. So I mean, they're going to be making sure that everything there is wiped down and all the CDC protocols for boarding a boat and checking it out and everything else as well. I mean, what?
Yes, and the other part of that is that this is normally an international event. This will not be an international event this year. People will not be coming. In some cases, we can't even get boats from South Africa or from Europe. We can't. People are not. Some of the boats that are the charter boats can't get out of the Caribbean at this point. So this is going to be by design and also just through attrition. This is going to be a smaller event. It's going to be a much more regional, super regional kind of event. Our advertising has been scaled back to be Mid-Atlantic, Midwest, New York, New Jersey, all those areas that have done a very good job because of good leadership, done a very good job in keeping the pandemic under control and keeping their positivity rates down, and now coming out of this thing in a much healthier manner. We're not going to get the people coming from around the country in California and Arizona and Texas and Florida. This is just a different event this year.
I didn't even think about the international aspect of this as I read articles saying that, hey, now the Bahamas is the latest country that won't allow United States citizens to go in, and I know there's probably every one of those countries that doesn't allow us to go in is probably sitting there saying, well, we don't recommend anybody from our nation to go to America at this point, just because we don't have apparently we don't have the virus under control or where it is. But I never really gave that much of a thought that would be an impacting another hammer. I mean, I swear every time I look at this virus, it's like this hammer that has 19 different heads on it that's slamming down different sides of the thing. Now, I mean, your economic impact to the city is huge. I mean, we've talked about I don't want to say the unintended consequences, but the overflow of the boat show. I mean, you've got restaurants and businesses that need people in there buying their, whether it be a T-shirt or a fudge or a souvenir or an alpaca sweater or whatever it is, and drinking the booze and eating the food. And for those 3 weekends, I mean, you bring them in, and I know at the end of the year guys always go up and present a check to the city as far as what they get and everything else. But I mean, what is the economic impact you have the numbers better than I do. that the boat shows has brought to the area? Do you have any idea over the 50 years?
Oh boy, over the 50 years, I would love to do that math, but it'd be very difficult. On average, just the income that the city receives from us directly as a rental payment, we're close to $500,000 a year. Now this year that will be smaller, but that's almost $500,000 a year that just goes to the city alone. There's been a simulation done to determine exactly what the economic impact is for locally, regionally, for Annapolis, for Maryland, and the estimate is $112 million. And it's $112 million of economic impact in October. We're not talking about the 4th of July weekend or some. This is in 2 weeks in October that happens. So that's a big deal. But in addition to that, all the hotels fill. Well, the hotel taxes then fund Visit Annapolis and all the work that they do. We have probably at least 24 nonprofits that earn their money during boat shows, either directly from the boat shows or because of parking at the elementary schools or things like that. So there's a huge number of people of businesses that are indirectly benefited because of that. We have hundreds of people that are employed during those weeks leading up to and during the boat shows and even following the boat shows. And the biggest thing that it does overall, and this is our greatest responsibility, is to the regional industry, marine industry. All the things that come out of the boat shows will be filling their pipeline for activities throughout the winter and next spring. That's how we sort of are the engine that drives that whole economy, and to a large extent during that time. I've had local sailmakers, for instance, that say they book 70% of their year's business during the boat show weekend, the 5 days of the sailboat show. We have charter companies who say they come to Annapolis to book 50% of their year's business. These are hugely important events for the industry itself. So it goes on and on.
Well, and Annapolis does pride itself on being a really maritime-centric industry, and they've done a very good job of it so far. I mean, they've withheld the maritime zoning close to the dock. I know that you're down at the new. I guess I got to get out of the habit of calling it the Fawcett's building, but I don't know whether I'll ever.
It's 110 Compromise, right?
Ever do that? But at 110 Compromise Street, I mean, you're right down there. I mean, you're in the heart of the maritime industry, and I know we've got a new sail clothing store that just recently opened up down there. You've got Whalertown. I know there's a restaurant that's supposed to be going in there at some point as well. It's just the tentacles that come out of the boat show and that are coming out of events in general are really significant.
Yeah, they really are significant, and they have been for many, many years. And like you mentioned before, we do both a powerboat show and a sailboat show in the spring, and to a lesser extent, it does the same thing. So we sort of bookend the season where we start at the beginning and we kick it off, and people start buying their boats and getting plans made for the season, and then we end it. And the purpose in the fall then would become not to buy a boat and drive it away during the show, but to shop all the major boat lines and decide which boat you want and configure the boat to order. You order your boat, and they manufacture over the wintertime, and they deliver them in the spring. And so it really does. It's an important aspect of the overall economy of the boating business, because that's what they do during the wintertime is fulfill those orders.
Well, aside from the 3 weekends that we're operating, I mean, this does seem like a slow-moving train that keeps chugging along to the next one. And I mean, what does it take in terms to plan this out? I mean, I've got to assume that on in October, middle of October this year, if everything were to go off, that you're going to turn around, maybe take a week off, have a couple cocktails or maybe a dozen, and start to plan for your spring show.
We do finish up. We work all the way through October in putting all these things away. We've got 500 floating docks that are almost 2 miles long. If you put them end to end, we've got miles and miles of cable. There's so many things that go into building a show like this, and the many, many months to prepare them. So we start that right after the show. We put everything away, get it all set, and by the 1st of November, then operations is pretty well shut down for the fall season. But in the office, and we have a staff of 7 or 8 people that work full time year round, and we start sending out our renewals for the following year in November, and we start contracting in November, December, and so we're up and running on the next year before the end of the previous year. So it's definitely a year-round business. The advertising marketing process begins. We have to develop our workshops. Our Cruises University is created on an annual basis, and we start taking reservations for that. We get all our instructors set. There's just number of things. I mean, yeah. I can't enumerate the numbers of activities that we have to work on.
And I imagine pivoting as you did in April is just so difficult without the type of direction that you need from the various governments, whether it be the state, the county, or the city. And you do, and I'm sure that you interact with all 3 of them at various points of.
We certainly try, John, and I'm not going to try and throw anybody under the bus. There are so many unknowns. It's unknown for us, but it's also unknown for health departments and other people too. We ask for guidelines. They say, and how do they apply conditions that are existing in May or June to something that may be completely different in October? How do you know if our positivity rate in Annapolis in Maryland now is down close to 4%? That's way lower than it was. I mean, it's much lower than it is right now in Florida. So those people testing positive are so low. It could be down to 2 or 1%, or it could go higher again in October. We as a company can't worry about that as much as the fact that we're going to keep everybody in our boat show safe. We're going to make sure that everybody is protecting themselves and everybody else out of respect for others. And this is going to be a boat show that, believe me, we'll never forget. But it will also be a productive boat show. It'll be something that people will enjoy like they always do, and actually won't be as crowded as it is quite often. So that will be a positive for the people attending.
I guess there's an upside if there is one to this. The steps that you've taken seem very significant. I mean, you're an outside event, okay? So we've got fresh air blowing across the docks. I was joking with somebody the other day. Actually, I think it's one of your exhibitors. I said, what other boat show can you go to when it can be 100 degrees one year and snowing the next?
Right.
But you've got the fresh air blowing across the docks. You've got everybody wearing a mask, which is not required if they don't, get within 6 feet of each other. And
we will require it.
Yeah.
We have to protect everybody. We again take this this responsibility very seriously. We will require that people wear face coverings if they're coming to the boat show. I'm sorry, that's the way it has to be this year.
And that's perfectly reasonable. But I think that you're turning around and you're eliminating. I mean, just the way that you're eliminating the lines. Okay, you're Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium. We're going to do the temperature. Okay, I'm assuming if I roll in with 104, you're sending me home.
Exactly.
And you're loading me up onto a bus, and you can now then at that point regulate the flow going into the show by dropping them off.
And you can imagine how many buses we're going to have because we have to have only 50% capacity inside in the buses. So even though we've proven that each person stepping onto the bus is theoretically healthy because they don't have a temperature and because they're wearing masks and that kind of thing, we still have to have certain restrictions, which means 50% capacity on buses. We have a couple of large tents still there. We're putting mesh sides on the tent so that the air flows through it. We're putting big HEPA filters, filtration systems on the inside, and ceiling fans. And we're going to have air moving through everything. We're taking the tent tops off of some of the big ones and making them individual 10 by 10s and doing some things like that. All one-way aisles, all people guiding you through the one-way directions inside the tent. So we're trying to do it all, believe me.
What could be a roadblock for you guys? I mean, you're prepared to go. I mean, at this point, nobody has told you not to go, correct?
Correct.
I mean, obviously, I would think that if all of a sudden there was this, giant surge of cases that rolls into town or something like that, could do something like that. But I mean, based on this, I don't see there's any reason why this should not go forward.
Well, that's certainly the way we're looking at it at this point in time. And by the way, within a couple of weeks we'll start getting into the $1 million plus investment in this event. And at that point in time, people have already planned to bring their boats from around the world, from other places in the country, to show the boats. You can't reverse that. At some point in time, you've made the commitment, and we've probably passed that. But at some point in time, we have to go forward with it. And so we think that all the guidelines lead us to believe that we're able to do it. But we're able to do it only if we do the responsible things and design it properly and put the proper guidelines and protocols in place and shut down certain things that are not, we won't have the big evening parties that some companies like to have. We won't have the beverage tasting areas where people congregate in the past. We just can't do those things. So we'll keep them spread out. And if they draw a 6-foot circle around themselves, there's room for everybody.
That's true. And you can look to a bigger and a better one in 2021.
Exactly.
This may be a stupid question, but I'm assuming that you have been in touch with the state health department as well as the county health department, which oversees the city.
Right. The state health department pushes it down to the county. And it's like the president pushes it to the governor.
Sure.
Now we've had conversations with the state Department of Commerce, with the state Department of Health. The Department of Health says that the county health department is carrying out their guidelines and that kind of thing. So we've had some meetings with them, and they're very concerned about their job. And we've had a lot of discussions with David Jarrell, for instance, the
city manager.
City manager has been very helpful to us and has had several conversations with us. So Kevin Simmons from Emergency Services and people like that. So we're trying to open these lines of communication with absolutely everybody that can impact us. We're talking with other events that are similar to ours, and finding out what kinds of procedures and protocols they're putting in place, and copying those and sharing ours with them, and that kind of thing. And in addition, what we're working on right now is about a 12-page manual that describes the requirements for everybody, for an attendee, for an exhibitor, from all of our contractors. I mean, we have very good contractors we work with year after year. They're all stepping up and trying to make sure that they've got the latest in technologies for cleaning and all those kinds of things in place. So we're trying to open these lines of communication with absolutely everyone, and we're hoping that will continue.
Well, it sounds like you've done everything humanly possible to make this happen. And
I'm sure we've missed something, John. We'll find out.
Well, where have they had another in-water boat show since this has happened in America?
In-water, they've had a couple of boat shows. They've been smaller events. Norwalk, I think, is the next one. There's one in St. Clair, Michigan, that's scheduled in September. There's one in Norwalk. And Fort Lauderdale is moving ahead. They're just 2 weeks after us. So they're scheduling some. Some have been canceled as well.
Right.
So it's kind of a hit and miss sort of thing. And so far, I think, as far as I know, it's the individual companies or producers, organizers that have done the canceling. I don't think anybody's been shut down that I'm aware of. There was an attempt to shut down, I think, the car shows, the Carlisle group in Pennsylvania, and that didn't go so well for the people trying to shut them down. So they came up with a plan that would make the shows safe, and they did their car shows.
Right. Well, I tell you, I think it's all funny that when you talk about the Annapolis Boat Show, in the boating world, you get rid of boat and shows, and you just say, oh, are you going, if you're talking in the boating world, you say, hey, are you going to Annapolis?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean like for a vacation or anything like that. That means, are you going in October on one of those 2 weekends? And everybody knows exactly what it means. I mean, you don't hear that. Oh, you going to Norwalk? Oh, what for?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I've always thought that Annapolis, of course, is known for the Naval Academy, and maybe some people know it as the first capital of the United States, and where George Washington resigned his commission, and that. But mostly they know it's the boat shows. And if you talk to people around the world, they know that the Annapolis Boat Shows is what it's famous for.
Well, it's like the icons of Maryland. It's the Bay Bridge and Thomas Point Lighthouse are two of the top, two top ones that are right here in in our backyard, if you will.
Yeah, well.
How are ticket sales going?
We're selling tickets. We get a lot of questions. Well, what happens to these tickets if if you don't have a boat show, kind of thing? And we tell everybody exactly what we did in springtime, which is you have your choices. You can move it forward to the next year, or we'll give you a refund. So we've sold tickets. We were sold out of our Cruises University, and but we reduced the maximum capacity by 50% too. So, but that was sold out. We haven't really pushed real hard to try and sell all of our workshops and some of the other things. Others we're canceling. Our favorite little first sale workshop program. We get people on sailboats. We've decided the boats are too small to put 4 people in there, close that are non-family members. So we've canceled that. And but no, things are progressing. We're cautioning our exhibitors. Don't pay everything at this point in time. Someone may someone may try and shut us down, but for the most part, we're moving ahead. Some of our exhibitors are opting or not to come, or say they can't come up with all the boats that they've done in the past, so they may have 1 or 2 fewer boats than they've had in the past. But it's all on an individual basis.
And it's definitely going to be a different kind of a boat show. Well, tickets are available. You can get them at AnnapolisBoatShows.com, and that's with an S in there, AnnapolisBoatShows.com. The Powerboat Show rolls in October 1st through 4th. Is that right?
The Powerboat Show is the 1st through the 4th, and the right. Sailboat Show comes after this Powerboat Show this year, which is the 8th through the 12th. You're correct.
Right. And the Sailboat Show always goes on Columbus Day weekend, right? Is that what the...
Yeah, it's always on Columbus Day weekend. We have then Columbus Day as a holiday Monday, and that we stay open through Monday.
All right. Well, Paul Jacobs from the Annapolis Boat Shows, I have my fingers crossed for you. And actually, tomorrow morning, I'm getting on a phone call with the county health officer and the county executive, and I want to bring this up as far as just different large-scale events that can be done safely.
Sure.
Where are we doing? I just want to make sure that it's on everybody's mind that, hey, this does need to go. And it is such a huge impact on any number of different things. I mean, the little, local by design store down at the bottom of Main Street selling local artisan stuff. I mean, they depend on having thousands of people in there in those couple weeks in October.
That's right. Yes.
And I'm sure the beer distributors, the bars, the servers, everybody.
That's right. And speaking of beer, this year the only Corona we're going to have in our boat show is from the bar.
That's Corona-free boat show. Not
right.
Not a bad thing. Paul Jacobs, thank you very much. Fingers crossed for you. We'll keep in touch, and anything we can do, just let me know.
Thank you, John. Appreciate the time.
Well, as we're talking about different festivals and events, we cannot get out of this conversation without talking about the Renaissance Festival. And we are on the phone now with Mr. Jules Smith, who is the general manager, correct? Did I get that right? Or
that's exactly right, John. Yeah.
Okay, the general manager for the Renaissance Festival. And the Renaissance Festival is one of I'd probably say it is the premier Renaissance Festival in the nation. I've been to several of them, and I will say it's hands down better than any of the other ones that I've been to. And how long have you guys been running here in Annapolis? Or Anne Arundel County, I guess you're not really Annapolis, but...
One side of the road we are Annapolis, the other side is Crownsville. But we've been here 38 years.
And this is a weekend event for 10 weekends? I think 10 weekends?
9 weekends, August 29th this year through October 25th.
And this draws thousands of people to the fairgrounds, and this is or the festival grounds, which is just before the fairgrounds on Crownsville Road. It is just a most wonderful experience to visit, to work there. We spoke about working there a little bit prior to pushing record. And it's just one of the iconic things that happens here in Anne Arundel County and Annapolis. I mean, you talk about the boat show, we can talk about the Renaissance Festival, and we can talk about 4th of July parade to a point is really intrinsic to Annapolis. Here we are, we're about a month out from that first opening of the gates. And I went to your website a little bit this morning. That's renfest.com with 2 N's. And it pretty much says, hey, hang tight, we're trying to figure this all out, which is just like every other business in the world at this point. But where do we stand? Is there any update to that? Or
we've become so institutionalized, and we're drawing above 300,000 people in 19 days, and we're employing generations of people. Grandparents and their grandchildren are working out here side by side in some of our food stands, and we, with all of our vendors and all of their employees and our employees, it's 1,300 people involved in the operation. So everybody's on pins and needles. Where do we go? What do we do? And we have about a 98% return rate right now on our employees. Everybody's eager to come back, and I'm talking managers and our adult employees who then are responsible for their own staffing in each location. But we're still pending, trying to see what is going to happen. The governor said that on June 12th, events could begin with guidance from the counties, and we're still waiting for some kind of additional information. And I've been getting help from the health department. We've addressed all the matters in the food end and whatnot, but we just don't know what the final requirements might be for attendance capacity, what restrictions people will have when they're here. We assume they're going to have to wear masks. We assume they're going to have to do social distancing. We assume we're going to have to follow most of the things we saw that the governor put out for guidance on entertainment events outdoors, and then we're following everything for restaurants and retail establishments as well. And I've been to other areas, Six Flags. A week and a half ago, I went to Hershey Park this past weekend to see how they're handling things. And it was, although it was quite warm at both locations, it was very nice, and it did not feel like it was an undue burden to operate that way or to be a visitor that way with the current situation going on. We're just kind of waiting to see what happens from them, and as you said, it's a month out. That means that we now have to, in a week, begin advertising, and that's a tremendous amount of money that we have to throw at that to get the ball rolling. And plus, we have to get in supplies, get in our food shipments, and everything can pend until about a week from now, and then it either has to all happen or it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's either time to, you got to get on or off the pot, one of the two. But and again, one of the tough things about a festival is that this is not like any other business that, as horrible as it is, I can tell a bicycle shop or a restaurant or something like that, okay, you need to close down right now. This is a train that has picked up speed throughout the last 9 months, 10 months, and it's moving pretty quickly, and it's going to take quite a bit of time to stop this, if indeed it can be. The county health officer and the county health department, you've obviously been in touch with them, and how have they told you to look to operate this year, or how do you envision? I know that I was talking with Paul Jacobs from the Boat Show, and he had said that they're coming up with the processes and the best practices on operating, and the health department seems to be in step with it at this point. What does attending and running a Renaissance Festival in 2020 look like?
Well, again, we assume that there's going to be a capacity limit, a fraction of what we've had before, 50% or something, and of our capacity, and that we'll park people in different areas of the parking lot so that they don't cross each other. And our plan is to check people out in the parking lot so that then they don't have to go through ticketing at the entrance, so that then they can distance themselves as they approach the entrance. And they'll wear masks. They won't get any service from anybody, not any of our food stands, beverage stands, or any of our merchants out here, unless they're wearing a mask.
There's a great way to get everybody in the country to wear a mask. Just don't serve them the beer.
Right. So, and obviously people are going to have to, remove it when they eat and drink, which I saw at the parks I mentioned I'd been to, and I see downtown, and that's fine. But because they're in their own groups and with their own people, and they're walking along and they're social distancing and everything. And then we'll, obviously have sanitizers, and we're looking to increase the number of restrooms but decrease the number of people. And so we were going to divide them up into men's and women's sections this year and make everybody a little bit happier and speed up the process. it's a little harder for us. I can't put stickers on the ground that say 6 feet apart because they won't stick. But we have other ideas for that we've seen used at other places, where essentially like an old bakery where you go in and pull a number off, and then they serve you so that you're not in a line, that you're not in between ropes right adjacent to other people. You could be just mingling out there waiting for your number to be called.
Number 20,
and then
number
come
20.
Up and get your steak, and move on. So we're looking at all those things, and that's one of the reasons we'd like to connect with the health department and make sure that we're following the guidance they're going to recommend. And I have worked with food safety people and environmental health, but we're still waiting just for those final guidelines that are going to direct businesses that are involved in this type of thing. And I don't want to sound like our business is more important than anybody else's. I've watched people, I have friends who have businesses who are really suffering. And, on a good year, a restaurant is a very small margin business anyway. We're not any different than anybody else, not any more special. But I have, as you mentioned, I have kind of a limited time frame, and then it's over.
Well, I would say that you are. I'll disagree with you there a little bit. I mean, you are special in any number of ways. I mean, most businesses have 365 days to operate, 261 if you take the weekends off. You have 20, and that's your year. That's your operating window, and you also are not able, I believe, to reschedule this. I mean, you couldn't turn around and say, okay, we're going to do it in the spring. Hopefully it'll be better, because of the lease that you have on the property is strictly for that August to October, right? That
and the zoning are specific dates. So no, we can't just move things around. And then we are entirely weather dependent. If it's hot in the beginning, the crowds are light. If it rains anytime, there's very few people. And on a glorious day, we get a lot of people.
Right. That's when the sign goes up on 97. Head into the Renfest.
Yeah.
And reconsider that one again. But I mean, you're very limited as far as what it goes there. I mean, I'm imagining as far as maintaining the distance. And I mean, the times that I've gone, obviously the crowds can be pretty significant. I mean, then are there going to be additional security are the people that are working it going to be more inclined to be, hey, step back in some sort of medieval accent, step the back a little bit?
Right. Well, obviously, we've been on the forefront of, and this shocked a lot of people 11 years ago when we started doing tickets online, and people were not used to going to an event like ours and buying tickets in advance. And the event being sold out, they show up and they say, well, cars are leaving, why can't I come in? Well, we don't park our lot more than once, so that it makes it easier for traffic movement and for getting people out later in the day. And so we have one capacity, and that's all we sell once. And we've been doing that for 11 years with our online ticketing, and so we can switch very easily to only online tickets, and so that there's no tie up at the gate waiting to buy tickets. And so we can regulate the number of people coming here. So I was going to hire the same number of police, because we pay for our own police service out here. And instead of using them all on the road, I was going to bring more of them inside to work in addition with the other police forces we have inside in our own security. And again, with lower numbers inside, it'll be easier to monitor people, and for our participants to also encourage people to keep their mask up, keep their distance. And it's, you don't want to bark at people because you don't know whose families, you don't know whose boyfriend, girlfriend. But you also, as an outdoor event, the guidance is a little confusing, because they'll say, well, everybody has to wear a mask. But the guidance was, if you can't stay more than 6 feet away, you have to have a mask outdoors. So that's part of the guidance we're looking for.
Right. Well, I mean, that's, I think it's reasonable to assume that, I mean, just when I go walking in the morning, there's times I pass people that I know that I'm not within 6 feet and I'm not wearing a mask. So I think that, you are going to be within 6 feet, not necessarily hanging and congregating. So I think that, to make sure that you have a mask would be a reasonable expectation for the Renfest to have as well there. I sit there and I keep looking at that 20-day window, and it just blows my mind that a business is, so focused on the 20 days where that's where it is. That's the meat of of the existence. We've been in kind of a limbo since March as to what we're going to be able to do. And I'm looking at the state's regulations. I mean, they do say that you're allowed to have these festivals. You're allowed to have gatherings, and there is no crowd limit size on it. But it does say that if any concerts or performances take place in amphitheaters or concert halls, you can't do that. Now, does this affect, do you know whether this affects any of your performance venues within the festival grounds?
Well, I presume when the governor said amphitheaters, he meant something like Meriwether Post Pavilion or something that does major events, concerts. And I didn't think he would mean, 12 benches in front of a little musician stage. So our plan was to do every other bench and to have seating on only half of them, and that people be distanced based on their group that they're with. If they know everybody, that's one thing. If they don't know anybody, they still got to stay away.
True.
And so then on Friday, I read in the paper this weekend that on Friday the health department stopped the Children's Theater from performing at the Anne Arundel County Fairgrounds. It's a little confusing from the paper, but it sounds like they were performing outdoors on the outdoor stage, and that people were sitting in the bowl there on blankets or their folding chairs and watching it in their own groups. And health department let them finish that performance but cancel the rest of them. Now I'm not so sure what that means. But when I walk through Annapolis, I see a musician standing in a patio singing, and I'm
people
not
sitting
quite
around
sure
them.
where the difference is. That indicates why we need the good guidance. We need clear, a bright line on what can be done, and then if we know that line, we can work with that line. As I said, the two events I went to, I went to First Sunday, July 5th in Annapolis, and things seemed to work out well there. I went to Six Flags in Hershey, and there wasn't a problem except in the water park sides where they don't require masks if you're at the waterfront. But otherwise, the parks were very well, people were very well behaved and following all the rules.
I think that message has gotten very clear nationwide that, we do need to follow these rules as much as you may personally or disagree with them. But I mean, that's, you've got to get out there. You've got to have your masks. You've got to, keep away from people that aren't in your immediate group. And it can be done. You're in an ideal type of a situation, I think. I mean, you're outside, so you've got airflow that's going on there. You've got movement of people. So for the most part, I mean, obviously when they're sitting there eating is one different thing, but you've got people that are moving in. I know that they always say that, if you're congregating around somebody for more than, 20 minutes or something like that, you're more susceptible than if you're, just passing somebody in the aisle in the grocery store is nothing to be really concerned about. It's, it's to the point that we do need to get back into a more normal sense. But again, you've got this 20-day window, which is just, that's your business. And there's so many people that are dependent on that. You've got the young people that are working at all the different stands. You've got your employees that are working with you year-round, the seasonal employees, and then the people that are the vendors that are coming in and the entertainers that are coming in from all across the country to do this and to bring this excitement to the area. And all the moving parts are coming together. I mean, it's just this giant jigsaw puzzle, and you're down to the last, 30 pieces, and it's, you're not sure. And I don't understand.
There's one other group that we have that's part of this, and that's fundraising organizations in the local area. So we have high schools, we have Boy Scout troops, Girl Scout troops, sign language people, Hands of Harmony, various churches, and they raise money for their organizations here. And so they staff our soda stands or our beer stands. And they usually take one day. Some of them take 2 days because they're bigger groups. And they raise money from those for their operations. And so we put out a call to them, and I've checked in with them in the last 3 weeks, and we still have 100% participation by all those groups. They all want to be here and do that because it's an important part of their fundraising operation.
Well, yeah, no, without a doubt. Do you have any idea what the economic impact is? I know every time I go out to dinner when the Renfest is in town, invariably there are just a ton of people in whatever, doesn't matter what restaurant it is, all dressed up in their RentFest garb that have been there in the morning and they've done their day and they're going to go out and drink and eat. I mean, what is the economic impact? Do you have any idea that the RentFest puts on to the area?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of multipliers, so I haven't done a lot of that. We did it when we were looking at some potential sites, and so 2010 or 12 is about the last time we did that. And the Department of Commerce says that for every dollar spent here, $2.73 is spent in the local community. So it must be fairly good return for those places, and that's not just people coming here and then going and buying gasoline or food. That's the people who are here building their booths and buying their merchandise and
Sure.
buying their food supplies and things that they have. That would put it at close to a $30 million impact in the area.
That's incredible. And it's got, as I mentioned to Paul, was that it has it's like a hammer with 19 different heads that just, okay, we can have this coronavirus and we slam down on it, but the hammers are falling everywhere else. Yeah, they're hitting the nonprofits, the local school districts, the PTAs, the churches that are looking to fundraise there. They're looking at the people that are coming in. They're looking at, obviously, the customers and your guests that are coming in, the entertainers, as well as you corporately as far as this goes. Do you have any idea of when? I mean, you said you've really got to move forward within about a week. Has the health department given you any idea as far as when there may be a green light or a red light, or has anybody ever told you no, you can't?
No, they haven't done that. And as I said, working with the director of the health department, and then environmental health, the food handling people have been terrific. We're on schedule with that. I have my permits for everything else to operate our campground, and the water tests. Everything is ready. You don't get food permits till right before. That's just the process. So I'm not worried about that because we've had a good relationship with them on that. So really, it's just what can my grounds hold, and what will the event look like inside when people come in? Will there be only shops and food, or will there be entertainment? And what level that entertainment could be? True.
That events need the guidance, and I mean, even if it's bad news, but they need the news. They need to be told.
Well, and you're absolutely right. I'm not a scientist, and this is a very fluid situation. When I told our participants in March that we would make a decision by a certain time, I expected it to be improved by then, and so I postponed my decision only because I thought it would be helpful to make sure that things were continuing to improve, and that doesn't seem to be the case. And so I'm not asking for any special consideration. I understand every other business out there is struggling as well, but at least they have some guidelines, and it would be very nice if we just had some bright guidelines that we could follow.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I mean, if I've got a store that sells widgets, I know that I can have X number of people in it, and I need to squirt this down and put this sticker here, and get a spit shield over my cashier, and I'm good to go. And that's just that's not happening for, and it's, whether it's you or any of the beer festivals or music festivals that typically, dote the summer calendar. My fingers are certainly crossed for the RenFest to come back into town. Again, the dates are August 29th through October 25th. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir.
And are you selling tickets yet or not?
Nope, we aren't going to do it because we don't really have permission to do it. So we're not going to jump the gun and then have to make refunds or anything.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit one more hassle that you don't need. But any information you can find at renfest.com. It's RENNFEST.com. And when you log on to that, the first thing that comes up is a message that says, "Hey, here's where we stand," and which today says we don't know where we stand, unfortunately. Fingers are certainly crossed for the Renaissance Festival. I've got to get my bee sting fix with the and My daughter, actually, she's down in Asheville, North Carolina. Comes up for 4 years running now. She says, "Oh, we got to find a weekend to go to the Ren Fest." And it's sort of like a daddy-daughter date. She's 25 or 26 now, so it's we do always enjoy it to get out there.
And if I can just make one final plug, it's I get letters, I get emails now from women who say it's the only place my 15-year-old will walk with me, or it's the only time I get to spend with my family and we have fun together at an event that entertains everybody. That usually you take your kids to a museum, they're not in the same frame of mind, or some of the events you do with them are a little beneath you or a little too simplistic. But here the same people can come and have entirely different experiences, even though they're in one group. And it just seems to transcend generations.
It's a wonderful place to people watch. The safety is, I've never heard of an incident there. I mean, but you don't hear of, brawls or fights or anything like that. And it's, and again, as you said, this is a perfect entertainment venue to let a 15-year-old either go with a family or go on their own. I think it's a much needed distraction in the summer for.
We usually get a kid comes around and says, "I can't find my parents," and not too often do the parents get too excited about it if they're separated.
I mean, there's one way out and one way in, and it's pretty well. Like the castle is pretty well guarded. Jules Smith, thank you very much for your time. Again, renfest.com is going to be able to give you the most up-to-date information. They do have a newsletter that you can sign up for there as well. The dates are August 29th through October 25th. And I imagine, as you said, we'll probably know within the next week or two, hopefully, fingers crossed, that where we are with that. And it is coming up pretty quickly, and I wish all the best for it. I hope to be walking through the gates within about a month.
Well, thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you.
This has been an update from Eye on Annapolis. Please visit us at eyeonannapolis.net. Follow us on Twitter at Eye on Annapolis. And be sure to subscribe to our daily news brief podcast, which is delivered every Monday through Friday to your phone or device at 7 a.m.